Greetings. I'm Laura Rainwater. I'm one of the pastors at Parker United Methodist Church, and it is good to be with you today. We are in the middle of our sermon series, Movies with a Message, and this past week, Pastor Cody talked to us about E.T., the extraterrestrial. She did a great job summarizing the story of E.T., about a 10-year-old boy who befriends an alien who was left behind. They become friends, and eventually that boy, Elliot Taylor, with his family and friends, they help E.T. return home. One of the key points of that movie is the close relationship between Elliot and E.T. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Elliot's initials are also E.T. This is an important movie for those of us that grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I can remember the movie theater that I attended with my family when we watched that movie, but what I especially remember is the music. Maybe it's because I was, and kind of still am, a self-professed band geek. I played the French horn. If there's anything that's good about John Williams, the composer who wrote the music to E.T., he's really good at writing horns parts. So maybe that's one reason why I like this music so much. It's also perhaps because I grew up listening to soundtracks of not just movies, but also musicals. So there was a very strong musical connection that I made with this movie. Over the years, the music has become precious to me, partly from nostalgia, but also as I learned more about soundtracks and I learned more about how this music impacts and makes a difference when watching movies. I have to admit, I love listening to podcasts, especially podcasts that review movies and soundtracks. And so if you would like to hear a little bit more about the music of E.T. and how it helps to bring the emotion both in the music but also to the movie, one soundtrack that I recommend is called The Soundtracks Show, and it's hosted by David W. Collins. And I have to admit, I listened to it a couple of times as I was preparing for today and just as I enjoy listening to the music. But for me, this movie with a message, E.T., has a soundtrack with a message. And I want to share a few things that I learned or something that captured my attention. In Pastor Cody's sermon, she focused on that famous phrase, E.T. phone home. And she asked us, how do we phone home? How do we stay connected with our loving God? One of the ways is through prayer practices or finding ways to be in connection and relationship with God and with others. In a similar way, how does music help us connect with God? I believe music is one way we can experience the emotions of a particular scene or movie. Or music in general also reflects different emotions, whether it's joy or worry or fear or even grief. In fact, I'm watching a series on Apple Plus. It's called Shrinking, and it deals with the grief of a variety of characters on that show. And one particular character, who actually is a therapist, said what he does in order to process his grief or to handle his grief is that he will set aside some time, usually about 15 minutes, and he'll listen to the saddest song that he knows. And then he just experiences that grief as he listens to that music. Perhaps you have a song that helps you to grieve or to feel some of those emotions that you need to get in touch with. In E.T., we experience a variety of emotions. One is the emotion of friendship. There are scenes of friendship, longing to go home. Also, the emotion of wanting to be connected with somebody else, or perhaps worrying about the unknown, or even flying. We feel those in a variety of scenes, and as I said earlier, I think John Williams is a master composer to help us to experience those experiences along with the soundtrack. I invite you to listen to the soundtrack. Maybe you've got the album or the CD or the cassette tape, or maybe you have a favorite streaming service that can play the music. And barring, if you don't have any of that, you can always check out clips on the internet, or just let me know and I can show you how to connect. But in the beginning scene of this movie, it begins with the music of a flute. It's playing what is called the call theme. It has a sense of wonder even with the instrumentation. It's with a beautiful flute, and it just is a longing excerpt of music. And it's played every time E.T. is longing to go home, longing for his people to return. What are you longing for? Are you like E.T.? You're longing to go home, longing for whatever it might be that feels like it's just out of reach? Are you longing like Elliot, who is in a family that's going through a divorce? Are you longing for what used to be, or longing for a return to normal? In those moments of longing, know that God is with you. God is with you as you search and as you seek. And even God is with you when you feel like you're all alone. The next theme that's heard in the movie is associated with keys. It's a government agent that's looking for E.T., and he's called Keys because we see the keys on the side of his belt. That song, or that tune, is just this low woodwind sound, and I think in the podcast they said it's a contrabassoon, and it just has a menacing tone to it. As you listen to it, you can't not hear one of the most menacing themes, especially of John Williams, but in all of cinema, that theme from Darth Vader. So listen to that and see if you can find a connection with Darth Vader. Because that theme at the beginning, there is a sense of worry, there's a sense of concern. And it reminds us that we are afraid of things at times. What are your fears? What worry seems to not let you go and even grows bigger as time goes on? What I will let you know is that the character of Keys turns out at the end not to be the villain, but instead he connects with Elliot, because he says in the movie that he's been longing for this experience of connecting with an alien all of his life. And so we see a connection between these two characters. So then I began thinking, sometimes those fears that we have turn out not to be fears, are not founded on anything that we need to be afraid of. Sometimes it's not as menacing as we imagine, but I will say that that happens just sometimes. There's a sweet theme in the movie that's associated with the friendship between Elliot and E.T., and it's called the friendship theme. And it's played when the two of them interact on screen, as they're getting to know each other, as they become friends. And we learn later as they start to feel each other's emotions. I believe it's first heard on the keyboard called the celeste, and that's the main instrument that's used for Hedwig's theme in the Harry Potter movies. There's a sense of childlike wonder. It's a sense of connection in a way that other instrumentation doesn't quite work out. What we know is that E.T. and Elliot do develop a strong relationship. So at one point, they're both dying, and at one point, they're experiencing the same emotions. What a connection the two of them have. And so I wonder, who is that friend in your life that you can count on, who knows you best and loves you, who perhaps knows what you're thinking and feeling before even you do? Someone who's been with you during the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Give thanks to God for this friendship. Give thanks that there is somebody in your life that you can connect with. Maybe they're still around, or maybe it's somebody that used to be in your life. And I wonder if we can ask God to help us to be that type of friend to somebody else. Of course, the most famous theme in E.T. is the flying theme. It starts with these frantic strings building up as the tension of Elliot trying to escape the governmental agents, and then later in the movie when all of the kids on the bikes are trying to escape and to be freed. And then it soars in its beautiful, majestic theme as E.T. helps them lift up from the ground and they start to fly as they escape danger, but they also do something they never imagined. They're flying. And in that music, the notes go up and then it comes down, and then it goes up a little bit higher, and then it goes back down, as if they're flying, just like we see flying. It's not always a direct line, but it's in this undulating wave. And then as the theme wraps up, it crashes to the ground, much like the bikes crash to the ground. Okay, sometimes they crash more gracefully than others. And I wonder, this theme brings a sense of joy. You can see the joy on the faces of them as they're flying on their bikes. And I wonder, what gives you joy? What music reflects those moments when things are just so exciting and your imagination just goes on and on? Or what music perhaps reflects those moments when you feel stuck on the ground, or you feel like you've landed really hard on the ground? Maybe that music can help us to remember that God is with us in the highest of highs, and when we fall to the ground with a big old splat. Know that God is with us in those moments, just like those good friends are, but even more with the God who created us, the God who celebrates with us, and the God who even cries with us. Those were the thoughts that kind of came through my mind as I was thinking about the movie, as I was listening to the podcast, and I was listening to the music. And so I ask you, what music do you listen to that lifts you up? What music do you listen to when you need a good cry? What music do you listen to that you could say is the soundtrack to your life? Not always the happy music, and sometimes the sad music. Maybe the music that speaks to you isn't a soundtrack like E.T., it's not classical music, or it's not an orchestra. Maybe it's country music, maybe it's some other genre. I have to admit, I'm kind of stuck in my own ways, in my own time, in my own music. But I know there's a variety of ways that we can have those emotions that come to us through music, that can be expressed with us through listening to the music. So the next time you listen to your favorite song, think, what is this song telling me? Doesn't have to be a hymn, doesn't have to be Christian music, doesn't have to be gospel. But as you're listening to your favorite song, what is it telling you? How is it connecting with you? How is it helping you to process your day, your week, your life? I believe that God can work in a variety of ways in our life, especially with music that just seems so otherworldly, that just seems so holy in so many times in our lives. So I look forward to hearing what songs speak to you. What is your soundtrack? And if you are like me and you're a self-professed band geek and you would love to talk about John Williams soundtracks, well, I'm up for that as well. Anyway, dear friends, go find your favorite song and listen to it today, and go in peace. Amen.